I transferred the house back into my name that Tuesday morning, sat in my lawyer's office on Bloor Street, signed the papers, and walked out with the deed in my hand. 42 years I'd been a contractor in Toronto. 42 years of building homes for other families, and the one I'd given my own son, I was taking it back. The whole thing started 6 weeks earlier, right before Thanksgiving. I was in my workshop in Mississauga, refinishing an antique chair for my daughter-in-law Claire, when my phone buzzed. Text from my son Daniel. "Dad, we need to talk about Thanksgiving." I set down my sandpaper. Daniel was 36, married to Claire for 8 years, 2 kids I adored. We'd always done Thanksgiving at their place ever since I bought them the house in Oakville 3 years ago. Beautiful, 4-bedroom Victorian, needed work but had good bones. I'd put down $200,000 for the down payment. Told Daniel it was his early inheritance, that I wanted to see him enjoy it while I was still around to appreciate it. I called him instead of texting back. That's how my generation does things. "Hey, Dad." His voice had that tight quality I'd started noticing over the past year. "Got your message. What about Thanksgiving?" Silence. I could hear Claire talking in the background, couldn't make out the words. "So, Dad, Claire's mother wants to host this year." I waited. Dorothy had always been civil to me. Bit cold maybe, but nothing I couldn't handle. "Okay," I said. "So you're going to Montreal?" "No, they're coming here, to our house." Our house. Not the house I'd bought them. Our house. "That sounds nice," I said, still not seeing where this was going. "I'll bring my maple bourbon glaze for the turkey." Another pause. Longer this time. "Dad, the thing is," Dorothy specifically requested that it just be her immediate family this year. She says Thanksgiving should be intimate, just parents and kids. I stopped breathing for a second, set down the chair leg I'd been holding. "I'm not your immediate family?" "Dad, come on. You know what I mean." She means the grandparents, the kids, us. Dorothy and Richard feel like. They feel like they haven't had enough time with Emily and Jacob lately. Dorothy and Richard. I repeated their names like I was tasting something sour. They live in Montreal. They see the kids 3 times a year. I see them every Sunday. "I know, Dad. I know. It's just this one year." "Did you tell her I bought you the house you're hosting Thanksgiving in?" "Dad, that's not fair." "Answer the question, Daniel." He exhaled. "What do you want me to say? That I should cause a family conflict over one dinner? Claire's really stressed about this already. Her mother has very specific ideas about how things should be done, and Claire doesn't want to fight with her. But she's fine with you fighting with me." "We're not fighting, Dad. I'm just asking you to understand." I looked around my workshop, tools I'd collected over 42 years, my grandfather's handsaw hanging on the wall. The workbench Daniel had helped me build when he was 12, more hindrance than help, but I'd let him think he was doing real work. "I understand perfectly," I said. "Tell Claire I hope she has a lovely Thanksgiving with her mother." I hung up before he could respond. That night, I sat in my apartment, the one I'd moved into after selling the family home when my wife Margaret passed 5 years ago. Didn't need all that space anymore. The place was quiet. Too quiet. I'd been looking forward to Thanksgiving, to seeing my grandkids, to Emily showing me whatever new drawings she'd made, to Jacob explaining some complicated thing about dinosaurs that I'd pretend to follow. My daughter Sarah called around 8. She lived in Vancouver, worked in tech, busy with her own life. "Dad, Daniel told me about Thanksgiving." "It's fine." "It's not fine. That's completely out of line. It's one dinner, Sarah." "It's not about the dinner, Dad. It's about respect." She paused. "Has this kind of thing happened before?" I thought about it. Started adding things up in my head like I was tallying a quote for a job. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe?" "Last Christmas, Dorothy insisted on opening presents at their place on Christmas morning, instead of coming here like we usually did. She wanted the kids to wake up in their own beds, experience Christmas morning the right way. Made sense at the time. Okay. And last summer, I'd planned to take the kids to Canada's Wonderland. Had it scheduled for weeks. Day before, Claire calls, says Dorothy and Richard are in town unexpectedly, wants to take the kids to the ROM instead. More educational, she said. "Dad." "Easter. Dorothy wanted them to come to Montreal. My birthday. Daniel canceled our dinner because Dorothy had gotten them tickets to some show. When Jacob had his 6th birthday party, Dorothy reorganized the whole thing, moved it to a different venue, said the place Claire had chosen wasn't appropriate. I stopped. Hearing it all listed out loud like that, it sounded worse than I'd realized. "How long have you been keeping score?" Sarah asked quietly. I wasn't. Not intentionally. I kept telling myself it was fine, that I was being flexible, that it was important for Claire to have a good relationship with her mother, at the expense of the kids having a good relationship with their grandfather. I didn't answer. Sarah sighed. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing. What can I do? You could tell Daniel this isn't okay. He made his choice, Sarah. He chose not to cause conflict with his mother-in-law over his father. So you're just going to accept it?" I looked around my apartment again, at the photos of Emily and Jacob on my bookshelf. At the Father's Day card Emily had made me last year, still sitting on my desk because I couldn't bring myself to put it away. I don't know yet. After I hung up with Sarah, I couldn't sleep, kept thinking about that house in Oakville. Not just the money, though $200,000 was nothing to sneeze at, even for someone who'd saved carefully their whole life, but the work I'd put into it. The weekends I'd spent there after they moved in, fixing the porch, repairing the foundation, updating the electrical. Daniel had been too busy with work, and I'd told him it was fine, that I enjoyed the projects. I'd rebuilt the back deck myself. 72 years old, out there with my tools, measuring and cutting and nailing, building a space where Daniel could have summer barbecues with his family, where I thought I'd be welcome. Thanksgiving came and went. I had dinner at a diner on Dundas Street. Turkey was dry, stuffing was from a box, gravy was thin. Waitress felt sorry for me, I could tell. Gave me extra pie. My phone stayed quiet all day. No call from Daniel. No call from Claire. No video call from the grandkids. Around 8 that evening I got a text. From Daniel. "Hope you had a good day, Dad." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done, just a perfunctory message to ease his conscience. I didn't respond. The next Sunday, Daniel called. "Dad, you want to come over? Kids have been asking about you." "When's Dorothy leaving?" "She left yesterday." "I see. So now that your mother-in-law's gone, I'm allowed back in the house I bought you." "Dad, don't be like that." "Like what? Honest? You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be." I felt something shift in my chest. 42 years of business had taught me when someone was trying to negotiate from a position of bad faith. Daniel was using the same tactics I'd seen from contractors who'd tried to cheat clients. Minimize the problem, make the victim seem unreasonable, act like asking for basic respect was an imposition. "Tell me something, Daniel. When you and Claire were looking at houses, do you remember what you said to me?" He was quiet. "You said you wanted your kids to grow up the way you did, with a grandfather who was around, who taught them things, who was part of their lives. You said that's why you wanted to stay in the GTA instead of moving to Calgary for that job. Remember?" "I remember." "So what changed?" "Nothing changed, Dad. You're still part of their lives." "On whose terms?" No answer. "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. When your mother was sick, those last 2 years, Claire was wonderful. She helped with the nursing care, she organized meals, she sat with Margaret so I could get some rest. I will always be grateful for that, but that doesn't mean I owe her mother unlimited access to my grandchildren at my expense." "Nobody's saying you owe anyone anything." "That's exactly what you're saying. You're saying I should accept being pushed aside whenever Dorothy decides she wants something. You're saying I should be grateful for whatever scraps of time I get with Emily and Jacob." "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying, Daniel? Explain it to me. Make it make sense." I heard him breathing on the other end of the line. "Claire's mother is. She's difficult. If we don't do what she wants, she makes Claire miserable. It's easier to just go along with what she wants." And there it was, the truth. "So you chose easier." "I chose my marriage." "No, son. You chose to prioritize your mother-in-law's comfort over your father's dignity. There's a difference." I hung up. That evening, I called my lawyer. Tom Chen had handled Margaret's estate, had done various legal work for me over the years. Good man, straight shooter. "Tom, I need to know something. That house I bought for Daniel in Oakville. The deed's in his name, but I paid the down payment. What are my options?" "For what?" "For getting it back." Silence. Then, "You want to take the house back from your son. I want to know if I can." "You gave it as a gift?" "I did." "Then legally, It's his. Unless you have documentation showing it was a loan. I don't. It was a gift. I meant it as a gift. Then I'm sorry, Lawrence. The house is his property. You can't just take it back. I thanked him and hung up, sat there in my apartment feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, helpless. But I'd been a contractor for 42 years. You don't succeed in that business without learning how to solve problems. And you don't deal with difficult clients, stubborn inspectors, and changing building codes without learning patience and strategy. I started keeping notes. Every time Daniel canceled plans, every time Dorothy's preferences took priority, every time I was expected to be flexible, understanding, accommodating. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I was supposed to take Emily to her swimming lesson. I'd been doing it every Wednesday for a year, gave Claire a break, got time with my granddaughter. Wednesday morning, Claire texted, "Lawrence, Dorothy's in town for a few days. She wants to take Emily shopping instead. Can we reschedule?" I looked at that message for a long time. Lawrence. Not Dad. When had she stopped calling me Dad? I called Daniel at work. "Did you know your wife just canceled Emily's swimming lesson so Dorothy could take her shopping?" "Dad, it's just one lesson." "It's every lesson, Daniel. It's every Sunday dinner, every birthday, every holiday. When does it stop being just one and start being a pattern?" "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to say you'll talk to your wife. I want you to say that your kids' relationship with their grandfather matters. I want you to say something that tells me you remember who I am and what I've done for you. You want me to thank you for the house again? Fine. Thank you, Dad. You bought us a house. We're grateful. But that doesn't mean you get to control our family decisions." "Control? I'm asking to see my grandchildren on a schedule we agreed to a year ago. That's not control. That's basic respect. Claire's mother is only here for a few days. Claire's mother is always only here for a few days, and yet somehow those few days always take priority over everything else." I hung up before he could respond. It was becoming a habit. Christmas came. I wasn't invited to Christmas Eve, or Christmas morning. I was invited for Christmas dinner, but only after Dorothy and Richard left at 3 o'clock. I arrived at 4, helped clean up the mess from the earlier celebration, played with the kids for an hour before they got tired, went home alone at 6. On the drive back to Mississauga, I made a decision. The next morning, I called Tom Chen again. "Tom, I know you said I can't take the house back legally, but what if I helped him buy it, and he wants to move?" "What do you mean? What if Daniel decided to sell the house? Would I have any claim to the proceeds given my investment?" "Not unless you had a written agreement." "Why? Is he planning to sell?" "No, but things change. People's circumstances change. I want to be prepared." "Lawrence, what are you planning?" "Just being practical, Tom. It's what I do." I hung up and drove to Oakville, parked across the street from Daniel's house. My house. The house I'd bought, I'd repaired, I'd improved with my own hands. I thought about Margaret. What she'd say if she could see this. She'd always been better with people than I was, better at navigating family dynamics. She'd known Dorothy was difficult, had managed to maintain civility without ever becoming friends. She'd have known what to do now. But Margaret wasn't here. I was on my own. I pulled out my phone and started researching. Real estate values in Oakville had gone up significantly in 3 years. The house I'd bought for $520,000 was now worth at least $750,000, maybe more. Daniel had maybe $100,000 in equity, accounting for his down payment and 3 years of mortgage payments. I called a realtor I knew, asked some hypothetical questions about market conditions, about what it would take to buy in the current market. Then I called my financial advisor, asked about liquidating some investments. Not all of them, just enough. Finally, I called Sarah. "I'm going to do something," I told her, "and I need you to know I've thought about it carefully." "Oh no." "Oh yes." I explained my plan. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. "Dad, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Daniel's going to be devastated. Daniel made his choices. Now I'm making mine. What about the kids?" That stopped me. Emily and Jacob. The whole point of all of this. "The kids deserve a grandfather who has dignity," I said finally. "Right now they're learning that it's okay to push people aside when they're inconvenient. That family is disposable. That respect is optional. I love them too much to let them learn those lessons." Sarah sighed. Okay, Dad, if this is what you need to do, it is. Then I support you. New Year's came and went. I spent it alone again. Didn't hear from Daniel until January 3rd, when he called to ask if I could babysit the following weekend. Dorothy and Richard are taking Claire to some spa thing in Niagara, and our regular sitter canceled. I felt that old familiar anger rise up, so I'm the backup plan when Dorothy's busy. Dad, please, we're in a bind here. You know what? No. No? No, Daniel. I'm not available. I have plans. What plans? That's not really your concern, is it? Just like it wasn't my concern when you couldn't tell Dorothy that you'd already made plans for Thanksgiving. You're being petty. I'm being consistent. You've shown me where I rank in your family's priorities. Now I'm showing you where your requests rank in mine. I hung up. My hands were shaking. 2 weeks later, I put my plan into motion. I called Daniel and asked him to meet me for lunch. Neutral Territory, a restaurant in Burlington halfway between Mississauga and Oakville. He showed up looking tired. Worried, maybe. Dad, if this is about the babysitting thing, it's not. I slid an envelope across the table. I want to buy the house back. He stared at the envelope like it might bite him. What? The house in Oakville. I want to buy it from you. That's a formal offer. Fair market value plus 5%. Cash, no conditions, 30-day close. Dad, I don't understand. It's simple. I gave you a house as a gift when I thought you valued having me in your life. That situation has changed. So I'm making you a business proposition. We can't just sell our house. Sure you can. Young family like yours, you could use the equity. Buy something smaller, put money in the bank, or rent for a while. See what the market does. But why would we do that? I leaned back in my chair. Because otherwise I'm going to buy the house next door and move in. His face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Check the listing. The house to your left went up for sale yesterday. 3-bedroom, needs work, listed at $680,000. I've already called the realtor. I'm putting in an offer this afternoon. You can't do that. I'm 72 years old, Daniel. I have a right to live wherever I want. And I figure if I'm going to keep getting excluded from family events in that house, I might as well be close by. That way, when Dorothy visits, I can wave to the kids from my front yard. That's insane. Is it? Or am I just doing what you've been doing, making decisions based on my convenience without worrying about how it affects you? He looked at the envelope again, didn't touch it. This is blackmail. No. This is a wake-up call. For 3 years, you've let your mother-in-law dictate when and how I can see my grandchildren. You've prioritized her comfort over my dignity. You've treated me like I'm lucky to get whatever scraps of time you feel like giving me. And you've done it all in a house I bought you. You gave us that house. I gave it to a son who loved me, who wanted me in his life. I'm not sure who you are anymore. He looked down at his hands. For a moment, I thought I saw my boy there, the one who used to help me in the workshop, who used to call me for advice, who used to introduce me proudly as his dad. What do you want, Dad? I want you to make a choice. You can sell me the house, take the money, and we can go back to having a normal father-son relationship without all this property complicating things. Or you can keep the house, and I'll be your neighbor, and you can explain to Claire why your father moved in next door. There has to be another option. There is. You could start setting boundaries with Dorothy. You could start prioritizing your kids' relationship with their grandfather. You could start treating me like family instead of an obligation. I paused. But I don't think you're going to do that, are you? He didn't answer. I stood up, left the envelope on the table. You've got 72 hours to respond to the offer. After that, I'm buying the house next door. I walked out of the restaurant. Didn't look back. That evening, my phone exploded. First Daniel, then Claire, then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Dorothy. I didn't answer any of them. Sarah called around 9. Daniel's having a meltdown. I imagine he is. Claire's furious. She's saying you're trying to manipulate them. I'm giving them a choice. That's the opposite of manipulation. Dad, you're really going to move in next door? If I have to. That seems extreme. So does telling your father he can't come to Thanksgiving in the house he bought you. She couldn't argue with that. The next day I got a call from Tom Chen. Lawrence, I just got a very angry call from Daniel's lawyer. He hired a lawyer? Apparently. They're saying your offer constitutes harassment, and they're prepared to pursue legal action. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Tell them to pursue away. I made a legitimate offer on his house, and expressed interest in buying a different property. Nothing illegal about that. They're also saying you're using financial pressure to manipulate family relationships. Tom, my son told me not to come to Thanksgiving. Then he started treating me like a part-time babysitter he could call when convenient. I'm not manipulating anything. I'm just done being disrespected in a house I paid for. So you're really buying the house next door? Already put in the offer. Seller accepted this morning. Silence. You weren't bluffing. I stopped bluffing when Daniel stopped seeing me as his father. 3 days passed. Daniel didn't respond to my offer. Instead, I got a text from Claire. Lawrence, we need to talk. Can you come to the house? I drove to Oakville that Saturday afternoon, parked in the driveway of the house I'd bought 3 years ago, walked up the porch I'd rebuilt, rang the doorbell on the door I'd refinished. Claire answered. No Dorothy in sight. Where are the kids? I asked. Daniel took them to the park. This conversation is between us. She led me to the kitchen where I'd replaced all the cabinet hardware, fixed the dishwasher, installed a new light fixture. Coffee? She asked. No, thank you. She sat down across from me at the table I'd sanded and restained because the original finish was damaged. What you're doing isn't fair, she said. Neither is what's been done to me. My mother is difficult, I know that, but she's my mother. And I'm Daniel's father. But somehow that seems to matter less. It's not the same. Why not? She looked surprised by the question. Because she's difficult. If we don't accommodate her, she makes everything harder. So it's easier to make things harder for me because I'll just take it. Because I'm not difficult. Because I love my son and my grandchildren enough to be flexible and understanding. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating them back to you. Claire, I don't blame you for having a difficult mother. I don't even blame you for trying to keep the peace with her. But I do blame you for expecting me to pay the price for that peace. I bought you this house. I've spent hundreds of hours working on it, improving it, making it better for your family, and in return I get treated like an inconvenience. That's not true. Last Wednesday you canceled Emily's swimming lesson, which I've taken her to for a year, so Dorothy could take her shopping. 2 weeks before that you asked me not to come to Sunday dinner because Dorothy wanted just immediate family. At Christmas, I wasn't invited until after Dorothy left. At Thanksgiving, I was uninvited entirely. Tell me which part isn't true. She looked away. What do you want, Lawrence? I want what I should have had all along. To be treated like family. To see my grandchildren on a regular schedule that doesn't get changed every time Dorothy visits. To not feel like I'm competing with your mother for access to my own son's life. My mother only visits a few times a year. And every single time she visits, I get pushed aside. A few times a year, every year, adds up to a lot of missed time with Emily and Jacob. She was quiet for a long moment. If we don't sell you the house, you're really moving in next door? The closing is in 3 weeks. That's going to make everything awkward. More awkward than it already is? She didn't have an answer for that. Daniel came home with the kids while I was still there. Emily and Jacob ran to me, and for a few minutes, nothing else mattered. Emily showed me a drawing she'd done at the park. Jacob explained a complicated game involving sticks and pine cones. I listened to every word, stored every detail away like treasure. When they ran off to play, Daniel stood in the doorway watching me. You win, Dad. We'll sell you the house. This isn't about winning, Daniel. Feels like it is. Then you've missed the point entirely. Claire stood up. I need to check on the kids. She left us alone. Daniel sat down where his wife had been. Looked exhausted. Why are you doing this? Because I spent 42 years building things. And I taught you that when something's broken, you fix it. But you can't fix something if nobody admits it's broken. Our relationship isn't broken. Son, I haven't had a meaningful conversation with you in 6 months. I see my grandchildren when it's convenient for everyone else. I'm invited to family events. Only when your mother-in-law isn't around. If that's not broken, I don't know what is. So destroying our living situation is your solution? I'm not destroying anything. I'm removing myself from a situation where I'm not valued. If you want to sell me the house, fine. Take the money, buy something else, start fresh. If you don't, that's also fine. But I'm not going to keep pretending that being marginalized in your life is acceptable just because you're my son. He put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Do you know what it's like being married to someone whose mother is like Dorothy? Every decision is a negotiation. Every plan is a potential conflict. Claire's constantly stressed about what her mother will think, what she'll say, how she'll react. And if I push back, if I say no, then I'm the bad guy who's making Claire deal with her mother's anger. So you chose to make me deal with your anger instead. I chose to keep my marriage intact. At what cost, Daniel? What did you sacrifice to keep the peace? He didn't answer. I stood up. You've got the offer. It's good for another week. After that, I'm your neighbor, and we can all figure out how to navigate that situation. I went to find Emily and Jacob, hugged them both, promised to see them soon. Walked out of the house wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. That night, Sarah called. Claire called me, she said. Of course she did. She's upset. Says you're forcing them out of their home. I'm not forcing anything. I made them an offer. They can accept it or not. She also said Daniel's been crying, that he feels like he's losing his father. That stopped me cold. He's been crying? That's what she said. I sat down hard on my couch. Daniel hadn't cried since Margaret's funeral. Maybe not even then, not where I could see. If he feels like he's losing his father, maybe that's because he's been pushing his father away for years. Maybe, Sarah said softly. Or maybe you're both losing each other, and neither one of you knows how to stop it. I didn't sleep that night, kept thinking about Daniel crying, about Emily and Jacob losing their house, about whether I was doing the right thing or just being a stubborn old man who couldn't adapt to changing family dynamics. But then I'd think about Thanksgiving, about Christmas, about all those canceled plans and last-minute changes and times I'd been treated like an afterthought, about the pattern I'd finally recognized, the slow erosion of my place in my son's life. I'd been a contractor for 42 years. I knew about foundations, about what happens when you ignore small cracks, small problems, small compromises. Eventually, the whole structure becomes unsound. This was me refusing to ignore the cracks anymore. 4 days after my ultimatum, Tom Chen called. Daniel's lawyer contacted me. They want to negotiate. Nothing to negotiate. The offer is the offer. They want you to rescind the purchase of the neighboring property. No, Lawrence. No, Tom. I'm not negotiating away my leverage just to make Daniel feel better about his choices. If he wants to sell, I'm ready to close. If he doesn't, I'm moving in next door. Those are the options. His lawyer says this constitutes elder abuse, that Daniel and Claire are being coerced. I laughed bitterly. I'm the elder in this situation, Tom, and the only abuse happening is the way I've been treated for the past 2 years. Just thought you should know what they're saying. Noted. Anything else? Daniel wants to talk to you, without lawyers. Just the two of you. I thought about that. About whether I wanted to have that conversation. About whether it would help or just hurt more. Tell him I'll meet him at the workshop. Tomorrow at 10. Daniel showed up at my workshop in Mississauga the next morning looking like he hadn't slept. I'd been up since 6, working on a client's project, trying to keep my hands busy. Dad. Daniel. We stood there for a moment, neither quite knowing where to start. Finally, he said, the offer you made, it's generous, more than generous. It's fair market value. That's not generous, that's just honest. We could make enough to buy something smaller, have money left over. That's the idea. But it feels wrong. Like I'm selling something you gave me. You're not selling it, Daniel. I'm buying it back. There's a difference. He walked over to my workbench, ran his hand over the surface. The same bench he'd helped me build 15 years ago. I remember making this. So do I. I thought I was doing real work, but you were doing everything. You were doing real work. You were learning. He looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in months. I fucked up, didn't I? The profanity startled me. Daniel rarely swore. What do you think? I think I've been so focused on keeping Claire happy, on avoiding conflict with Dorothy, that I stopped thinking about how it was affecting you. He paused. I told myself it was just temporary, that things would get better, that you'd understand. I did understand, Daniel. That's the problem. I understood so well that I let it keep happening. What do I do now? You make a choice. You sell me the house, or you don't. Either way, You need to figure out how to be a husband without forgetting how to be a son and a father. Dorothy's not going to change. I'm not asking her to. I'm asking you to stop expecting me to disappear whenever she shows up." He sat down on one of my work stools, suddenly looking much younger than 36. "Emily asked me yesterday why Grandpa wasn't at Thanksgiving. I told her you were busy. She asked what you were busy with and I couldn't answer. Just kept saying you were busy." "What did she say?" "She said, 'But Grandpa's never too busy for us.' And then she went to her room and made you a card. It's still on her desk. She hasn't given it to you yet because she hasn't seen you." I felt something crack in my chest. "I never wanted it to be like this," Daniel said quietly. "When you bought us the house, I thought it meant we'd see you more, that you'd come over all the time, work on projects, spend time with the kids. I didn't think it would turn into this. Neither did I. If I say no to the offer, you're really moving in next door? Closing's in 2 weeks. That's insane, Dad." "Is it? I'm 72 years old. I live alone. Why shouldn't I live next door to my grandchildren? The only reason it seems insane is because you know it'll force you to confront the situation you've been avoiding." He didn't argue. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yeah. If your mother was still alive, would you have done this to her? Would you have uninvited her from Thanksgiving, canceled her time with the grandkids, made her feel like an inconvenience?" "No." "Why not?" Because Mom wouldn't have stood for it. Neither would Margaret. Your mother would have called you out the first time it happened. She wouldn't have waited 2 years and let it accumulate until it became this." I paused. "Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I should have said something sooner. Maybe I should have noticed sooner." We sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear traffic on the street, the ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning in Mississauga. "I need to talk to Claire," Daniel said finally. "That's between you and her. I need to set some boundaries with Dorothy. That's also between you and her. Dad, what do you need from me? What would make this right?" I thought about that question, really thought about it. "I need to know that I matter. Not as a bank account, not as a babysitter, not as a backup plan, as your father, as Emily and Jacob's grandfather. I need to know that when you make family decisions, you're thinking about me too. Not just about Dorothy's preferences." "Okay. Okay? Okay, I'll do better. I promise." I wanted to believe him, wanted to think that this conversation, this crisis, would be enough to change things. But I'd been a contractor for 42 years. I knew the difference between someone saying they'd fix something and someone actually fixing it. "I appreciate that, Daniel. But I'm still buying the house next door." "What? Why?" "Because your promise is just words. And I've heard words before. I need to see actions." "So the offer on our house still stands. You can sell it to me if you want, or not. But either way, I'm moving next door, at least for a while, until I see whether things actually change. You don't trust me. I don't trust the situation. There's a difference." He looked hurt, but he also looked like he understood. "How long? How long what? How long until you trust the situation again? However long it takes to prove that things have actually changed. Could be 6 months, could be a year, could be forever if nothing changes. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Daniel. You should know that by now." He stood up to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. Really sorry. I didn't see what was happening until it was too late. I know you are. Will you come to dinner tomorrow? Just family, no Dorothy. Just us and the kids. Is that a real invitation? Or a pity invitation because you're afraid I'll foreclose on your house?" "It's a real invitation from a son who misses his father." I looked at my boy, saw the sincerity in his eyes, and felt something loosen in my chest. "What time?" 5 o'clock. "I'll be there." After he left, I sat in my workshop for a long time, thinking about Margaret, about what she'd say if she could see me now. She'd probably tell me I was being stubborn, that I should give Daniel a chance to make things right before taking such drastic action. But she'd also tell me I was worth fighting for, that I deserved respect, that love without dignity wasn't really love at all. I went to dinner the next night. Emily gave me the card she'd made, covered in drawings of the two of us. Jacob showed me his rock collection, explained the difference between igneous and sedimentary stones with the seriousness of a scientist 3 times his age. Claire was quiet but cordial. Daniel was attentive, asked me about my current projects, actually listened to my answers. It felt almost normal. Almost. When the kids were in bed, Daniel and Claire sat down with me in the living room. "We've been talking," Claire said, "about boundaries. With Dorothy? With everyone. But yes, mostly with my mother." She looked uncomfortable. "Daniel made me see that I've been unfair to you. I've been so worried about managing my mother that I haven't thought about what we were doing to you. Okay, I can't promise my mother will change. She is who she is. I'm not asking her to change. I'm asking you to stop letting her determine when and how I can see my grandchildren." "I know." She took a breath. "So we're implementing some new rules. Sunday dinners are yours. That's your time with the kids, and we're not canceling unless there's an actual emergency. When my mother visits, we'll make sure there's time for both of you. And holidays." She glanced at Daniel. "Holidays will alternate or do both families together. But you won't be excluded again." "What about Dorothy's reaction?" "That's my problem to manage, not yours." I looked at Daniel. "And you're okay with this?" I should have done it 2 years ago. I wanted to believe them. Wanted to think this conversation meant something. But I'd been disappointed too many times. "I appreciate this," I said carefully. "But I'm still moving next door." "Dad, not forever, just for a while. Until I see whether this actually works." "You bought a house just to prove a point?" "I bought a house because I needed to know I wasn't powerless. And because if things didn't change, I wanted to be close to my grandchildren, even if I wasn't welcome in this one." Claire looked at Daniel. He looked at me. "How long?" he asked. 6 months. If things are genuinely different, after 6 months, I'll sell it. And if they're not, then I'll be very happy in my new home, next door to my grandchildren, and you'll all have to adjust." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the reconciliation scene you see in movies, but it was honest. And sometimes honest is better than perfect. I closed on the house next door 3 weeks later. Moved in with minimal furniture, set up a proper workshop in the garage. Daniel helped me move, which felt both strange and right. The first Sunday dinner after I moved in, Dorothy called while we were eating. Claire answered, talked for a few minutes, then said she had to go. "We're having dinner with Lawrence," she said. Not apologetically, just factually. I didn't hear Dorothy's response, but I saw Claire's face stay steady. "We can talk tomorrow, Mom. Love you." She hung up. Daniel caught my eye across the table. I nodded once. It was a start. 6 months later, I'm still next door. Things have been better. Not perfect, but better. Sunday dinners have happened every week without fail. I took the kids to Canada's Wonderland last month, no cancellations. Thanksgiving this year included everyone, Dorothy and Richard and me, and while it was awkward at times, it happened. Dorothy and I have reached a careful peace. We're never going to be friends, but we're civil. More importantly, she's stopped expecting everyone to rearrange their lives around her visits. Daniel called me last week about selling the house next door. Said I'd made my point, that things had changed, that I could move back to my apartment if I wanted. I told him I'd think about it. Truth is, I like being close to the kids. Like being able to walk next door when Jacob wants to show me his latest dinosaur book, when Emily needs help with a school project. Like being part of their daily lives instead of a visitor who shows up when convenient. I'm thinking I might keep the house. Not as a threat, not as leverage, just as a place to live. Close to family that actually wants me around now. Sarah thinks I should sell it, that keeping it sends the wrong message. But I'm 72 years old. I've earned the right to live where I want. Yesterday, Emily came over after school, asked if she could do her homework at my table while I worked on a project. We sat together in comfortable silence, her with her math problems, me with my woodworking. Every now and then, she'd ask me a question about fractions or I'd show her how to sand with the grain. It was ordinary, unremarkable. It was everything. That night, after she went home, I sat on my front porch and looked at the house next door, the house I'd bought Daniel, the house where my grandchildren lived, the house that had become the symbol of everything that had gone wrong between us. I didn't regret buying it for him. Even now, even after everything, I didn't regret it. But I also didn't regret what I'd done to protect my dignity, to demand respect, to refuse to be marginalized in my own son's life. Sometimes love means giving freely, and sometimes it means refusing to let giving turn into being used. I'd spent 42 years as a contractor, building things for other people. But this past year, I'd finally built something for myself. Boundaries, self-respect, a place in my family that nobody could take away. And I'd taught my son a lesson that perhaps I should have taught him years ago. That being family isn't about blood or obligation or who gave what to whom. It's about respect, about showing up, about making space for the people you love, even when it's inconvenient. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. Dad, can you come over tomorrow? Need help with that deck railing you mentioned. I smiled. I'll be there at 9, I wrote back. Then I sat on my porch a while longer, watching the sun set over Oakville, feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Like I was home,